Hello everyone, I'm really excited today. I am interviewing the one and only Nigel Risner. Nigel is a world-class speaker, a trainer and a coach. He has 20 years experience into the speaking business and I'm really happy to have him. I'm just going to add him into the broadcast. Some people may not like him for it, but he focuses on results, gets results, and he shows people the exact way of how to do it. So I'm just waiting for Nigel to come into the broadcast. Hope everyone's having an amazing day today. Give it 1 second, it's saying no answer, so let's keep on.
And we're there.
Hi, Nigel. So I'm going to introduce you a little bit again because we've got some viewers that have only just come on and there was a bit of a delay there. So Nigel is a world-class speaker, trainer, coach. He's been in the speaking business for over 20 years. He shows people how to get results. He makes people better than they are, and he shows them the exact way to get there. Some people may not like him for it, but that's what he does, and he gets the results. So Nigel, welcome. Thank you for being my guest today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's an honour to be here.
So Nigel, can you tell me a little bit about your story and how you ended up speaking all over the world?
Partly it was a mistake because I had been doing commercial finance for about 15 years and I'd made a lot of money and I'd lost a lot of money. And then I went on a personal development course and I thought, I'd like to do what this guy's doing, but I'd like to do it for business. So I joined him for a couple of years, part-time. And then I had the honour to work with Jack Canfield in Santa Barbara, Jack Canfield being the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And over a period of time, I then developed a system of working with clients, and I got invited by one of my banks, who I was a finance broker for, to start working with their team. Then I met the Academy for Chief Executives 20 years ago, and I've just done my 20th year with them. And the story has gone on that every time I speak, what I'm really looking for is to make a difference to the team. And if they like me, that's a bonus. Most speakers are what I call applause orientated instead of results orientated. So, I'm not really worried about the scores on the doors on the day of the speech. I'm interested in my scores 3 months later. And for anyone who's listening, if you're really good for your client, the results will show up very quickly.
You touched on a really good point there, Nigel. Personal development so important, and very similar to you. I used to watch people at personal development events, and that was what brought me into speaking. And I think personal development is so important for life and for business.
Well, what happens in England, and more so in England than nearly every other country I've spoken in, we don't like the word personal development and self-esteem. What's ironic is that's what everyone needs. They need higher self-esteem, higher self-motivation, more personal development. So you have to dress it up to some executive phrase like leadership in the 21st century. And then I talk about self-esteem. But if I was to do a workshop called How to Have More Self-Esteem in the Workplace, I wouldn't get booked.
And also you touched on, you're not for applause, but I know you do get big applauses because I've watched some of you on the stage and you put a lot of humour into your speeches and make people laugh.
Well, I call it entertainment. So you want to entertain an audience and you want to train them and give them value. So when they leave, they haven't just had a good time, something else is going on. However, it's about making sure that the people you're speaking to get a result from it. And it's tough.
So can you give us a little bit of advice for any new speakers, new coaches that want to do better in their speaking businesses and have bigger success? What is your advice to the new and aspiring speakers and coaches wanting to do more public speaking as a business?
Well, lesson number one, it's about them, not about you. So they don't want to hear your personal therapy on stage. There are too many speakers that do a very great story, how they overcame something. And whilst I'm not knocking it, and I've had some horrific stories in my past, but that doesn't always help your audience. What you want to do is give them some tools and techniques they can immediately implement to make a difference. But when you first start, you've got to think about less is more. What often happens for speakers, we have so much material that we want to give them so much value that we forget that most people can't listen to too much. If I asked anybody who's watching this program right now, how many jokes you can remember from a Michael McIntyre or Peter Kay session, which is unbelievably brilliant, you'll probably only remember about 2 or 3 jokes, even though you laughed for the 40 or 50 minutes. So if you think as a speaker that you're going to share an awful lot of information, and when they leave the room, and I'll talk about being in the room in a minute, but when they leave the room and then someone says, you know, I just saw you speak, I heard you saw Nigel speak, what did he talk about? There's a good chance they'll only remember 2 or 3 things. So you want to make sure those 2 or 3 things are really key messages. So I always talk about being in the room, about being focused. And if anybody ever asks, what does Nigel talk about? They'll always say, Nigel says, if you're in the room, be in the room. But I've got people 20 years later who still say to me and email me and write to me, I'll never forget when you told me to be in the room. Well, there's a reason for that, because that's so key. You know, I'm doing this program with you, and in the back of my mind, my dog's not been well, and he's about to get picked up by the dog minder, and there's a bit of my attention which is focusing on my dog. That's not great news. But if I was on stage right now, the only person that would matter is the audience I'm with. And I often joke on stage, I've got 2 great kids, but they're not in the room, so I don't care about them. It's not that I don't care about my kids, it's just that they're not there right now. When I'm with my kids, they're the most important people in my life. Lesson number 2 is about, can they share something to their friends about what you said or did? Or is it just lots of PowerPoint, lots of theory? So, you know, you want to have some good images. You want to have a great statistic. You want to have something that people go, I get that, I understand. But last but not least, you want to make sure there's a hook. So I've done lots of stuff on communication using my animal model. And everyone knows I'm a monkey, and I talk about being a monkey. And then all my videos or all the little Facebook stuff that I send out on Twitter is normally got an animal theme to it. So I'm keeping that message alive.
I can totally relate to the dog, because my dog Lily, she's a Staffordshire Bull Terrier and she's my world. So I can understand that will be on your mind.
Well, no, so if you see me turn to the left, it's because Alfie, bless him, is giving me a little look like to say, I'm not well.
Oh, so I got from that, it's all about making sure there's lots of takeaways. It's really important of how you can.
No, not lots of takeaways, a few memorable takeaways. They won't remember.
What people will
remember. Won't remember lots of takeaways. I just said, you know, Michael McIntyre will do his second best joke first to get people in the room. He'll do a couple of stories, and then he'll leave you with his best story at the end. And
a few takeaways, what are really rememberable.
Yeah, and if you think about the next time you meet someone who heard you speak last week, last month, last year, ask them, what's one of the things you remembered? And you will find after a time, most of the people remember the same 2 or 3 things. Very few.
And them are the things to keep.
Yeah, I mean, very few people.
Can I ask you?
Go on, sorry, I'm talking too much.
No, you go. No, you go. It's your interview.
Very few people remember a whole speech. So if you visualize your hand and you have a great opening line, which is your thumb, you have 3 key messages, and then your little finger is the call to action. That's all you need to do in a speech. Much more than that is too complicated.
That's awesome advice, Nigel. Can I ask you, because you speak all over the world in so many different countries, can I ask you about your first international speaking gig and the story behind it?
Okay, so there are 2 stories, because I did something in Bulgaria very early on, and I was seen at a HR conference, and one of the head of HRs of a major Bulgarian HR association asked if I'd speak. And of course, me being me, went, yeah, of course, no problem, because that's what monkeys do a lot. We just say, yeah, no problem. The problem is virtually no one in Bulgaria spoke English. When they nod yes, they do this. That's yes, and that's no. And it was unbelievably confusing. And when I got to the airport, I couldn't find the man who was picking me up. So I'm stuck in Bulgaria. Nobody speaks English. And I thought, this isn't for me. But the real story about international speaking, and I'm going to upset a few people now, you can earn as much money speaking in Coventry as you can most of the country, going around the world. But it's not as glamorous. So I have a couple of friends who will tell you that the place I love speaking is at the Birmingham Metropole and at the Coventry Ricoh Stadium, because I can be home by
Yay.
I can be home by 4 o'clock. So I'm going to Orlando tomorrow. I then come back, and then I'm going to Riga doing a joint presentation with Jeff Ram. I'm then going back to the States, Geneva, and then I've just had my first gig agreed today or yesterday in Australia. And it all sounds great, but you've got to be able to recover, and you've got to be able to make sure you're in the room for your next presentation. And too many speakers, and I will share this, and I don't really want to, but I will. But 15 months ago, I had a brain aneurysm because I just did too much. And it forced me to slow down. And I'm asking everyone who's listening to this, don't have a brain aneurysm to slow down. There are easier ways to slow down.
Yeah, I think as well, it's important to focus on your health, because it's great having health, wealth, happiness and success. But I think the health, without the health, none of that matters. So I do think it's important to look after your own well-being too.
Well, the phrase is we spend all of our health creating our wealth, and then we spend all of our wealth looking after our health.
That's a good one. Nigel, can I ask you any tips or advice on how to get more bookings and how to really build a good speaking business? Any do's, any don'ts?
Okay, so some people have heard me use this phrase, but it's really key that I have a model called fit, fee, or flee. So if the fit is right, I'll speak virtually anywhere. So if there were 300 HR executives, the fee's not the biggest issue. The fit's the key issue for me, because I do lots of work with HR. I do lots of work with chief executives. I do lots of work with the NHS. So I want to make sure the fit is right. So the fee is secondary in that respect. But if it's in the middle of, and I'm not going to be disrespectful, so if it's an association that's got 37 members and they're buttonhole makers, it's unlikely you're going to get much business from them. And if it's in deepest Wales or in the Highlands and Islands, you want to make sure there's a good fee. So if the fit's not right, you better make sure there's a good fee. And if the fit's not right and the fee's not right, you need to flee. What tends to happen is a lot of new speakers will do stuff for the exposure. Now that's okay, providing the fit is right. What you don't want is exposure in the wrong area, because then they may want you to go back. And if you go back at a very low fee, that's the fee you're going to get. So,
great advice,
I'm not saying you will be able to start off earning £5,000 to £10,000. You won't. But you want to make sure that the areas that you want to speak in are the places you want to get rebooked. So I'm going to Australia and I'm super excited. And I'm happy to be rebooked there. I've been to a couple of countries. I didn't want to be very good there because I didn't want to go back.
Also, Nigel, I know that you're writing a new white paper on communication. Can you tell us a little bit about that too?
No, we've just finished the white paper on communication, and it's all about zookeeping in the workplace. So we've just finished that, and it's just gone out with one of our largest clients to 600,000 office workers. And part of the Leesman Index with TSK is to show people how best to work and where to work in the workplace. So, you know, you want to make sure your surroundings work. And if you get the animals in the right place, then they work unbelievably well. But what I am doing is writing my new book, The Impact Code at Work. And, you know, it's hard because I get bored very easily. But, I've got my next pad. You know, I'm still writing all my notes on the next lot. And, you know, we've got...
I like paper.
But I have no option but to do that, because I need help writing, and I have loads of stories, but it's got to make sure that every story and everything you write in your book means that if someone who read the book and hadn't heard you speak, they could potentially book you. And my books, the impact code in it's 0 around here. We have literally sold thousands and thousands of copies because it's an easy read and you can implement the stuff easily. Having a fantastic book that nobody wants just motivates the garage, and your garage doesn't need any motivation.
That's great. I mean, if you could drop the link to that book in the comments as well, that would be great. And how can people get hold of you, Nigel, if people want to connect with you?
The easiest way is to go either follow me on Twitter, which is Nigel Risner, or my website is nigelrisner.com. You want to make it easy for people to get hold of you. Having a sophisticated website and a Twitter handle, all the rest, means it's not easy. So everything that we do is around my name because it's easy. So NIGELRISNER.com. My Twitter handle is the same. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm very good because I respond very quickly. And the reason I respond very quickly is because that's what people want. So you must make sure your phone number is everywhere. Even in a digital age, people still want to ring you.
Definitely. I've thoroughly enjoyed interviewing you today, Nigel,
Cool.
and I highly recommend everyone connect with Nigel. He's an absolutely phenomenal speaker. And thank you for being my guest today. Do drop your link to your book and connect with Nigel. That would be brilliant.
Delighted. Thank you so much for spending the time interviewing me. Thank you for some great questions.
Thank you, Nigel, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Be good. See you soon.
Bye. Bye.